Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the NewsHour tonight, full coverage of the bombings in Israel with the Israeli ambassador to the United States, a Palestinian official, and 2 former American diplomats. And a weekend of protesting Cuba. Betty Ann Bowser reports. It all follows our summary of the news this Monday.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lara has been provided by the Archer Daniels Midland Company, ADM, supermarket to the world. And by New York Life, yet another example of New York Life's wise investment philosophy. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by the annual financial support from viewers like you.
There was another terrorist bombing in Israel today. At least 12 Israelis were killed when a bomb exploded in a crowded Tel Aviv shopping center. More than 100 were injured. Police said the attack was the work of a suicide bomber. He blew himself up next to a line of people waiting at a bank machine. The militant Muslim group Hamas claimed responsibility for the attack. Hamas had done the same for another suicide bombing in Jerusalem yesterday. 18 people aboard a bus were killed. Yesterday, Prime Minister Shimon Peres declared war on Hamas. Today, his cabinet created a special strike force to combat the terrorists. It will be authorized to hit anywhere, including areas recently returned to Palestinian control as part of the 1993 peace accords. In Taylor, Michigan today, President Clinton condemned the bombing during a campaign speech.
It is truly ironic that the same forces that brought down the Israeli Prime Minister from within his own country and those who have killed the Israelis in the last couple of days have one clear thing in common. They both want to end the peace process. They live for division and conflict. And I ask all of you, my fellow Americans, to send a message to Israel. If you fight for peace, we will stand with you. That is the right, the noble, and the good thing to do.
We'll have much more on the bombing story right after this news summary. House Speaker Newt Gingrich endorsed Bob Dole for president today. Gingrich said he had cast an absentee ballot for Dole in tomorrow's Georgia primary. He told reporters Dole is the candidate who can advance the Republican agenda.
What we need is a president who will sign welfare reform, sign a balanced budget, sign tax relief for middle-class families. And I think, frankly, that Senator Dole has done a superb job. And I did vote for him this morning, and I think that he's really, I think he is the next president of the United States, and I think that that'll rapidly become clear as we go through the primaries over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Dole won the primaries in South Carolina and Puerto Rico over the weekend. The candidates campaigned in Georgia and New England today. They were looking for support in tomorrow's Junior Tuesday primaries. A total of 208 delegates will be selected in Colorado, Georgia, Maryland, and 5 New England states. There will be caucuses in Minnesota and Washington state. The U.S. Supreme Court today upheld the right to confiscate property used to commit crimes. The 5-4 ruling reaffirmed the authority of local, state, and federal prosecutors. The majority said forfeitures do not violate due process or constitute unlawful taking of private property. The ruling rejected the appeal of a Michigan woman trying to recover the car that her husband had used to patronize a prostitute. In economic news today, the Commerce Department reported personal income rose 0.1% in January, while consumer spending fell 0.5%. Severe winter weather was blamed for both figures. And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to the bombings in Israel and the demonstrations about Cuba. The lead story of this day was the bombing tragedy in Israel. Our coverage begins with this report by Gabby Ratto of Independent Television News. Be warned that some of the pictures are graphic.
The worst nightmare of the Jewish nation, indiscriminate carnage in the midst of their biggest city, Tel Aviv, revisited them this afternoon. Among those killed was the suicide bomber. He is thought to have walked across the street into a crowd of people near a hole-in-the-wall cash machine at a bank, and then he blew himself up, along with those around him. The place is Dizengoff Street, the Israeli version of London's Oxford Street. The timing of the bomb in the mid-afternoon was calculated to kill and maim as many as possible, with shoppers getting ready for a 3-day Jewish holiday. Children, many in special costumes for the celebration, were said to be among the victims. Not only did this latest atrocity come just a day after the Carbon-Covey bus bombing in Jerusalem, this attack itself was an almost exact repeat of a bus bombing in Dizengoff Street in October 1994, when 22 people were murdered. As in the case of Jerusalem, the brutal message of the terrorists was that they could strike twice wherever they wanted, whatever the emergency security measures imposed by the Israeli government. As it grew dark, the Israeli Prime Minister, Shimon Peres, paid a visit to the blood-stained scene, as he has done in Jerusalem twice in the past 8 days. Distraught crowds have been venting their anger on him. What's certain is that the bombers are killing his dream of peaceful coexistence with Palestinians. Early this morning, Israeli soldiers demonstrated a new hardline policy when they raided the Al-Fawar Palestinian refugee camp, the former home of 2 earlier suicide bombers. They rounded up 1,000 men and arrested 30 suspects and were expected to demolish the homes of the families of the suicide bombers, who were known to have been members of Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement. In Jerusalem this morning, 1,000 extra troops appeared by bus stops, another outward sign of the new security measures taken by the government, the war against Hamas announced by the Prime Minister yesterday. However tough the new arrangements, the Tel Aviv bomb a few hours later showed that the terrorists could switch tactics and locations and always leave security forces one step behind. Overnight, the Israeli army tightened the closures of Palestinian-controlled territories as a first step towards setting up a 2-kilometer-wide zone of separation in the West Bank. From now on, the Arab population will only be allowed to cross into Israel at a small number of checkpoints. The timetable leading up to the Israeli elections on May the 29th has now been thrown into disarray by the acts of violence. This month, the Israeli troops were to have completed their redeployment from Hebron, the last and most volatile West Bank city to come under Palestinian control. Today, in the wake of the Tel Aviv bombing, Israel withdrew its delegation from the Syrian peace talks in Washington. That process is now on indefinite hold. May was supposed to be the starting date for the last stage of the Oslo peace plan, talks on final borders, the status of territories, and the fate of Jerusalem. Mr. Peres himself has said there may be no point in those talks now. Tonight, anger in the streets of Jerusalem. For the 3rd time in just 8 days, the Israelis are mourning new victims of terror, and scenes like this show that their patience is running out.
Now to a newsmaker interview with the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Itamar Rabinovich. Mr. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you.
Any new information on the bombing itself that you can add to that report? The death toll still 12 civilians plus the bomber himself.
Unfortunately, the original grim reports are accurate.
Yeah. And the suicide bomber had 30 pounds of explosive wrapped around him. That
is unfortunately still all true.
Is there any question about his ties to Hamas?
No. There's been a version that this is an Islamic Jihad operation, but frankly, whether it's Hamas or whether it's Islamic Jihad is of little consequence right now.
It's is there any word on where he might have gotten these explosives or where he came from?
Just speculations, but the point is that this is one of the more interesting, curious points in this said saga, that one is focused in these situations on the lone suicide bomber, but the lone suicide bomber is part of a network. That there is the original depot somewhere in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank, and there is a distribution network, and there is a supply route, and there is a preacher who does the brainwashing, and then there is the operative who does the final dispatching. And obviously that network is what we have to deal with.
And that network is being dealt with now by this special task force that was set in motion today in Israel?
That is our share of it, but there is another important share that is to be done by the Palestinian Authority. We have left Gaza, we have left the main cities of the West Bank. Part of the territory is still under our responsibility, and we all saw what we have been doing near Hebron. But in those areas where the Palestinian Authority holds sway, it is challenged with the need to do that.
Is it your information that that's where this network begins in the areas that are under Palestinian control?
And this is where the political leadership of Hamas is, this is where the operational network is, this is where the preacher is. When these demented young men go about exploding themselves and 20 or 30 others, it begins in a brainwashing session that almost invariably takes place in a place like Gaza or like Hebron.
And what is the route this man took to come to this Tel Aviv shopping center? Do you know yet?
No, we don't.
Yeah. When you say the preacher, you don't have a person in mind, a specific person. You mean a type. Is that correct?
No, we do have names of at least 5 or 6 preachers who have been doing this with impunity for 2 or 3 years now.
Impunity, meaning that nobody stops them, and is this a violation of the law?
Of course it's a violation
No,
of
I
the
mean
law.
to preach what they're preaching.
To send somebody to kill other people is a violation of the law, as I understand the law. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but I meant these people are not preaching any kind of gospel or any kind of religion. They're preaching hate and murder, is what you're saying.
Hate and murder, and they do the brainwashing that induces normally a young man in his 20s, which is the type, to go ahead and do that.
Is it the Israeli government's position now that to stop this, it has to be stopped back there at the source? It cannot be stopped within Israel. That the security measures just aren't good enough.
Right. There is not a single actor that can do it. I think that we have to do what we have to do. The Palestinian Authority has its own share, and then they are the Arab states. The Palestinian Authority is a fledgling political organization structure. It needs the support that the established Arab states can provide. The established Arab states that are part of the peace process, that support the peace process, that negotiate and implement with us, ought to help the Palestinian Authority in what obviously is a very, very difficult challenge for the Palestinians themselves.
What is the Palestinian Authority not doing that the government of Israel wants them to do in this particular area to combat terrorism like this?
They are not going through a persistent campaign. This is not the first time. Some of the earlier incidents have been mentioned, and some of the ringleaders, the leaders of Hamas, have been picked up, arrested briefly, and then released. And there has to be a consistent, persistent effort. Secondly, a message has to be sent that this is something that is bad, that is not only causes harm to the Palestinian cause, but is abhorrent in its own right. It ought to be denounced. There can be no double messages or subtle suggestions that some form of struggle are legitimate and others are not. I mean, all forms of terrorism must be denounced equally.
Now, this new strike force that was formed today by your government, they plan to move into Palestinian Authority areas if necessary?
I'd put the emphasis on if necessary. It's the term really is not so much a strike force as a staff.
Okay.
This is a staff headed by the director of the General Security Service, and whose main efforts are to coordinate, to plan, to think of fresh ideas. We have seen a situation described graphically by the reporter whereby we have seemed to be always one step behind the terrorists. The main idea with a stuff like that is to be one step ahead of the terrorists. Mm-hmm. Now, we do not preclude acting in all regions, but our preference clearly is for the Palestinians to do what they need to do so that we do not have to go back to areas that we have already left.
I read a report, maybe you can confirm it, that this particular suicide bomber was headed inside the shopping center, saw some Israeli soldiers there manning their posts, and then apparently decided, well, he couldn't get through there with his bomb, and that's when he decided to detonate himself on before he got in. Is that correct?
I've read the same report, and this really underlines the difficulty of dealing with a suicide bomber. I described before the suicide bomber as part of a network. That is where our hope is. We can deal with the network. But there's also a major difficulty, that is to say, when somebody is determined to kill himself at all costs somewhere, if he cannot do it in point A, he'll do it in point B, and that is something that on the practical level is very difficult to deal with.
Why were the peace talks with Syria suspended?
They were not suspended. We decided as a categorical move. the government decided that the 2 days of talks that were scheduled for this week will not take place this week because the atmosphere is not right. When Israel is in spin trying to deal with oncoming terrorist blows, when the country is in mourning, these 2 days could wait. It's not a far-reaching political statement, but an attempt to do the right thing for this time.
In other words, it shouldn't be read that this means that the Israeli government believes that Syria somehow is tied into these terrorist attacks?
No, we do not believe that this originates in Syria. We would have preferred that the Syrians condemned these attacks in very clear language, but there is no conditionality here. The government made its decision for the reasons that I've described below, and we are expressing our displeasure at the Syrian failure to condemn the attacks separately from that, but we are not conditioning one thing with the other.
As we reported from Israel, there thousands of young Palestinian men were detained, and then several were arrested. Are things like that going to happen in the next few days? Is that what we should expect? Are there any other kinds of actions that the government, under this new strike command, are planning to take, or do you know?
I'm afraid that there isn't that many attractive measures that can be taken in order to combat terrorism, but I think that everybody in Israel and outside Israel agrees that right now the priority is to stop the carnage, to stop this sustained offensive and terrorist campaign, and we'll do whatever it takes in order to stop it.
All right. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now a Palestinian view of these bombings, and to Charlene Hunter-Gauld.
It is the perspective from the Palestinian Authority of Yasser Arafat. Hassan Abdel Rahman is the chief representative of the Palestine Liberation Organization in Washington. Mr. Rahman, what can you tell us about who's responsible for these bombings of the past few days?
Well, it's obvious that those who are responsible took responsibility for their action. They call themselves the Cells of Yahya Ayyash, who is the engineer, quote unquote, the person who was assassinated by Israel in Gaza through the explosion of a cellular phone about a month and a half ago. They call themselves the Cells of Yahya Ayyash. So, but we understand also that those probably belong to the arm wing of Hamas, a very clandestine, small, tiny military group who most probably received their instructions from outside of the Palestinian territories, the West Bank and Gaza. So those are...
Like where? From where?
I believe that there are members of Hamas or Jihad Islami who are living maybe in Iran, maybe in some of the Arab countries, maybe in Europe, in the United States. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But all we know that those are operatives who are engaged in acts of terrorism, and we are determined to really uproot this malaise, because we believe that it is directed mostly against the ability of the Palestinian National Authority to establish itself.
The wire services are reporting that Palestinian security forces have arrested a suspect in these bombings, a 28-year-old student at a teacher training seminary. Can you shed any light on that?
No, I have no information on that. The last time I had communication with our headquarters in Gaza was about 2 hours ago, and I have not heard anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you heard the Ambassador Rabinowitz's analysis of who these people are, not the suicide bombers per se, but he said that they belong to a network in which there's a preacher who stirs up things and brainwashes these young people to walk into crowds like today and blow up people and things and himself. How does that analysis square with your knowledge of how these things are set up?
Well, I don't want to really engage in polemics with Ambassador Rabinovich, because I understand the situation he is in, and most of the Israeli government and the Israeli public, due to the regrettable, sad, and senseless killing that took place. We have always to remember that some of the victims were Palestinians. Today, 2 Palestinians were buried, one in Jerusalem and one in in Beit Jala. So we have Palestinian victims also as consequences of those incidents.
But what was
However,
wrong? Yeah.
yes, I believe that there is a general environment, and the general environment was in the past, before the peace process, conducive to this kind of situation. Now, when the Palestinian National Authority took control, we moved on those groups, and we succeeded to a great extent, to the point where we were able to conduct a free and democratic elections, where 80% of the Palestinian people cast their vote in support of the peace process.
But how do you respond to the ambassador's claim that these preachers have been able to preach hatred and brainwash these young people with impunity, he said, for the past couple of years?
You cannot really, in any democracy, arrest people for what they say. I mean, and I have not heard of anybody calling on Palestinians to commit suicide and engage in suicidal killing with impunity, as the ambassador says. But, I mean, he cannot cite any incident. I don't want to get into polemics. What I'm trying to say, in Israel, there are rabbis who are calling for killing of Palestinians. I'm not asking the Israeli government to arrest those, because as long as people do not engage in activities, in actions, you cannot arrest them. However, we have took preventive action in the past and arrested hundreds of people. And we were able to really split Hamas and bring into the political fold many of the leaders of Hamas, to the point where the last election showed that Hamas's real size shrunk from 40% when Israel was in Gaza to 8% when we took control of Gaza.
Well, today a spokesperson for Yasser Arafat said he was very angry about the bombings and said this was a declaration of war and that it should be treated as such. What did he mean about that?
Well, we believe that those acts of violence, although are directed against Israeli citizens, but they are intended to undermine the peace process and to undermine the capacity of the Palestinian National Authority to build itself. It is not an accident in our views that this takes place a week before the Palestinian National Council, the Palestinian Elected Council, is convened. It is just in the day or 2 days or 3 days before that we are building our national institutions.
Well, so, you know, there have been calls for from President Clinton and the Israeli leaders for Arafat to do more. Do you think that that there is more that could be done that hasn't been done?
I think I understand the situation in the Israeli government. I believe that some of the statements that were made reflect some panicking by the Israeli government and only play into the hands of the Israeli right wing, as well as in the hands of the Palestinians who oppose the peace process. Because once you start accusing Arafat of not doing enough, you are planting doubt in the minds of the Israeli public opinion.
Well, President Clinton
I don't believe that's accurate.
President Clinton said that it's difficult, of course, and everybody realizes that it's difficult to stop any suicide bomber who takes it on his own authority to go and blow up people. But that everybody, including the U.S., has to do more. I mean, do you accept that the Palestinian Authority hasn't done enough and could do more? And is it going to do anything different?
Oh, what we have been doing what we needed to do then. Probably we need to do more at this point. And that's why yesterday President Arafat declared all those organizations as illegal and outlaw organizations. We moved to arrest many of the leaders. So there are steps and measures that has been taken in the last week or so. But what I'm warning against is really a reactive measures by Israel, like the one today in the refugee camp. Why do you need to detain 1,000 people and arrest 30? This really plays into the hand of Hamas. Hamas cannot survive in a peaceful situation. They can survive only in a war situation.
Why is that?
Because Hamas, the extremism in any society is the product of despair, of deprivation. We have 50% unemployment in Gaza. among our labor force in the West Bank. So closure by Israel of those territories affects the Palestinian economy.
Earlier today, the ambassador said that the Palestinian Authority needs to go street by street, house by house, in the areas where these suspected terrorist networks are and seek them out. Otherwise, Israel might have to go in itself. How do you react to that?
I believe that is really an exaggerated reaction. I don't think you need to go from house to arrest people. I mean, you should think of the price that you have to pay as a result of that.
And what about
if
if
it's not necessary?
What happens if the Israelis go in, though? If
I
they've
think
decided that
counterproductive.
what the Palestinian
It
Authority
would be
is...
absolutely counterproductive, and it would not, and it would be a self-defeating approach. What Israel needs to do is to expand the peace process, not to play into the hands of those small minority. I cannot guarantee, and neither the ambassador of Israel can guarantee, that this man who committed suicide today got his instructions from Gaza or received the explosives in Gaza. He might have bought it from somewhere in Israel itself. Nobody knows. So let's not really react to this very strongly and move to formulate rational policies that serve the peace process.
Mr. Rahman, thank you.
Thank you.
Now some analysis of this situation from two Americans who have been involved in making peace in the Middle East. Elizabeth Farnsworth has that.
Both of our guests have been ambassadors to Israel. Sam Lewis served under Presidents Carter and Reagan, and more recently was Director of Policy Planning at the State Department. He is now a counselor to the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. Edward Jerigian was ambassador to Israel from 1993 to 94. He was ambassador to Syria from 1988 to 91. He also served as Secretary of State for Near East Affairs in the Bush administration. He is now director of the Baker Institute for Foreign Policy at Rice University in Houston. Thank you both for being with us. Ambassador Lewis, let's continue this conversation that Charlene was having with Mr. Rahman. Where do you think that the terrorism of this sort can be stopped or has to be stopped? Is this something that the Palestinian Authority can deal with? Is this something the Israelis have to deal with on their own? Do they have to act together?
I think they do have to act together. I don't think there's any chance of stamping it out perfectly, even in that event, for a long time. But the intelligence services of both Israel and the 5 intelligence services of the Palestinian Authority, who have been cooperating, need to cooperate a lot more closely. The authority has to roll up some of these networks. The Israelis are in a wave of the kind of emotion that I think anyone can understand, with 60 people killed in the last 9 days and carnage all over the streets of the 2 major cities. And unless there is much more action than there has been on getting at some of the really bad actors, the Israelis will have no alternative but to try to do more themselves. And I think that will have very adverse political consequences, but there won't be an alternative. It's got to be a cooperative job.
But you said that even if they cooperate, you're not optimistic that they can stop it, at least in the short term.
Not totally, but look, no one has found a solution to suicide bombers. But I think that the key here is to show enough success to restore a certain degree of confidence in the Israeli public that their security, personal security in their major cities, can be, again, given some confidence. If that doesn't happen, the peace process is finished.
Ambassador Jerigian, do you have any comment on that? Peace process finished unless there can be some kind of progress shown on terrorism?
Well, I think we have to remind ourselves that the Arab-Israeli peace process has always been a race against the violence and terrorism on the ground of those opposed to the peace process, and on the other hand, the forward movement of negotiations themselves. It has always been that way throughout the history of this peace process. And now we're seeing a an extremely tragic and rough patch in these negotiations. The people who are really behind these acts of terrorism are obviously enemies of peace. I agree with Sam Lewis. There has to be more effective coordination between the Israeli authorities and the Palestinian Authority, much more coordination. But on top of that, I think there has to be more of an internationally coordinated effort to get at the international financing and support mechanisms for specific groups that are behind these terrorist groups. So we need an effort on the part of the Palestinians. They have direct responsibility. On the part of the Israelis, direct responsibility for their own people, the security of the Israeli people, coordination between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, and then an international effort to try to get at the support systems behind these groups. And here I think the United States can play a major leadership role.
Do you think that's one of the main things that the U.S. can do right now, is to provide intelligence and other means of getting at some of those networks?
Well, it's not only providing intelligence, but it's really mobilizing the effort to try to stem the support that is being given to these groups. But at the same time,
You mean from the United States, or?
Well, from wherever.
Anywhere.
There are financial flows from the United States, from the Middle East, from other countries. There are weapons supplies. There's training. This is truly one of the greatest challenges that the international community has in a post-Cold War era, is actually these forms of terrorism. And in the Middle East, it has a certain poignancy because certainly we have invested so much, the United States has invested so much in the Arab-Israeli peace process, that at this very fragile stage, I think the U.S.'s role is to maintain the structure of the peace process during this electoral period in Israel and during this period of incidents of terrorism, to sustain it so that it can proceed.
Do you think it can be sustained in this period, given all these
Well,
blows?
I think it's possible. Shirley and I agree with Ed, but I'd like to focus really on where the international problem is. There's a lot of evidence that the military wing of Hamas doesn't necessarily take its orders from the political wing in Gaza. That in fact there is a leadership group of the military wing of Hamas in Damascus, very closely tied in with the Iranians. And the Iranians are the major external supporters.
Even though
of international
the
terrorism.
ambassador said he did not have evidence that there was anybody in Syria. There is evidence.
He was quite careful about that,
okay.
I think. And this is a clear diplomatic problem. Israel's negotiating with Syria for peace. We're a player in this. No one denies that Hamas leaders and leaders of a number of other anti-peace leadership factions reside in Damascus, nor is there much ambiguity about the Iranian support and maybe even direction of some of these groups. Now, how you mobilize international pressure on the headquarters of the military groups in the territories is tricky. The U.S. can't do it alone. Other Arab states, it seems to me, need to play an important role in this. For those Arab states that are now signed on to the peace process, and many of them are, could have more influence than we, I would suspect, on this kind of problem.
And do you see any evidence that that could happen? Are you optimistic about that?
Well, I'm guardedly hopeful, let's put it that way. We need to do a lot of diplomatic work. The Egyptians need to do it. The Moroccans need to do it. The Israelis need to do it with others. The Syrians need to be talked to. The Jordanians. Everybody has a role here. But unfortunately, nobody has much influence over Iran. And that's where I think the problem originates.
Ambassador Jerigian, do you have anything to say to that? You were ambassador to Syria.
Well, I think the role, the support mechanisms are diverse. The important thing here is that certainly we know that there has been Iranian funding of certain Palestinian extremist groups, and certainly support. And we obviously know there's a direct tie between Iran and Hezbollah in the south of Lebanon, which is another dimension of the problem, not the Palestinian dimension, but another dimension of the problem of terrorism and acts of violence. But the important thing here is that it's not good enough for just Israel or the Palestinian Authority. It needs an international effort, the regional level, at the international level, a multilateral effort on the part of all the actors and players, and not only the parties involved in the peace process, but also some of the countries in the world that have a stake that is equal to ours in the success or failure of the Arab peace process. I'm talking about the Europeans, Russia, Japan, and others.
I want to talk about the peace process. Do you think it can survive this? And
I think
in the election campaign?
I think it can survive this, but I think it is on life support at this moment. this comes at such an awful time in the electoral process. Shimon Peres was leading by 15 percentage points just 9 days ago. Now he's probably well behind. He's certainly at least even. And there's no way, if you have a few more incidents like the ones this week, that Bibi Netanyahu and the Likud and the right-wing coalition will not win. Now, assuming that were to happen,
there's no way they wouldn't win if this
they would clearly win if this continues. And Peres, who is the most devout advocate of the peace process, and his colleagues will do everything possible to avoid abandoning the peace process. But the Israeli public has lost confidence in peacemaking, and these waves of emotion have to be gotten over and digested to get back to a serious confidence in the peace process. And every terrorist incident starts a new wave. Now, I think it's possible, therefore, but I'm very, very worried at this moment that the peace process will gradually grind to a halt and then after the election begin to recede.
And Ambassador Jerigian, if Mr. Netanyahu, the Likud candidate, won, what would that mean?
Well, we have to be candid about this. Both Labor and Likud have a different vision of Arab-Israeli peace. Likud's vision of a comprehensive settlement is quite different than Labor's definition and vision of an Arab-Israeli settlement, both on territorial issues, on the issue of Israeli settlements, and a number of other issues. Both on the Palestinian front, on the Syrian front specifically. So the peace process would obviously take a different form if Likud came into power in Israel, and we have to be clear on that.
Might it stop altogether?
I don't know. That's quite speculative, but certainly it would be an entirely different process than the one we have now under Labor.
What do you think that we'll see in the next, just briefly in the time we have left, that we'll see in the next months? What kind of a declaration of war was made against the Hamas and other Islamic Jihad and other groups? What do you think we'll see? We've seen that there were 1,000 Palestinians arrested today.
I think you'll see additional direct efforts by Israeli security forces to follow up leads, to roll up networks. You'll see less of them if there's more activity by the Palestinian Authority to do the same, but I think you'll see some in any case.
Will we see anything?
I really don't think the Israeli government at this point has any political alternative, at least, to trying to do everything it can to reassure its own citizens that it's doing everything possible to protect them.
Okay, thank you both very much for being with us.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, a report from Florida on the Cuban exiles. But first, this is Pledge Week on public television. We're taking a short break now so your public television station can ask for your support. That support helps keep programs like this on the air.
Hello, I'm Casey Cowan here with Larry Blackmar. The NewsHour was created because public television was convinced that there was an audience for something more than just 60-second news bites. And learning more is the reason why so many OPB viewers rely on the NewsHour to fill in the gaps left by the network news shows.
It's a different approach to the news, making complex issues intelligible by expanding the time devoted to exploring them.
Won't you take some time now to call us and let us know that the NewsHour has earned your support? Now, there's a particularly great time to give right now because we have an exciting way for your membership dollars to go even farther when you support OPB. A special group of current OPB members have made contributions above and beyond their regular membership. And for the next 10 minutes, the OPB Partner Member Challenge Fund will match your contribution dollar for dollar up to $1,000. It's the best time to call, folks. OPB thanks these current members who challenge you to become a member of OPB. So let's start the clock here. 10 minutes, that's all you have. The challenge is on, and we want to hear from you. Remember, if you're calling from Portland, the number is 245-2345. And from anywhere else in our viewing area, all of Oregon and Southwest Washington, call us toll-free, 1-800-245-2346.
Time is counting down. Memberships begin at $35 a year. But if you're able to support OPB at a higher level, think about this. Right now, for a pledge of $75, you can have this handsome OPB black and gold collage tankard mug. Or how about an investment of $125 for this matching OPB black and gold collage sweatshirt?
Now, your $60 contribution to OPB brings you this delightful book, Where to Find Oregon in Oregon, by Bridget Beatty McCarthy. It's a comprehensive guide to Oregon's special places that represent the essence of the state, plus a listing of establishments whose products or services offer a local or regional experience. This easy-to-use book is yours with your $60 contribution to OPB. These great gifts are great ways to support TV worth watching, and the numbers, of course, are right on your screen. Remember, if you're calling from Portland, the number is 245-2345, and from anywhere else in our viewing area, all of Oregon and Southwest Washington, call us toll-free, 1-800-245-2346.
Besides the programs, membership in OPB offers tangible benefits too. As a member, you'll receive a year's subscription to Oregon Focus, our magazine and program guide, and an OPB member card, your ticket to VIP discounts at museums and cultural events around the region.
A program like the NewsHour is a monument to how good television can be when it's used as a tool to encourage thought and expand understanding. Now, we only have about a little over 8 minutes left on the clock, so call us now and get your pledge matched right now. Doubled it. I'm very grateful to OPB for including us in the search for understanding. Now, if you feel the same way, this is your chance to let us know. In Portland, 245-2345, please go to your phones. Elsewhere in Oregon and Southwest Washington, wherever you're watching, call us toll-free, 1-800-245-2346.
The phones are ringing, less than 8 minutes to go, and this is an opportunity to have your donation actually matched dollar for dollar. Remember that none of this could have happened without two important elements. One, public TV's respect for you as an audience, and two, your financial support for OPB and programs like the NewsHour. It's an investment in the future that's worth every dollar you contribute.
And every dollar you contribute will be matched if you call us now. About 7 minutes and 30 seconds left. Now, the easiest way to pledge to OPB is on your credit card. You can choose a one-time payment plan or spread your contribution out over a period of time. Using your Visa, American Express, Discover, or MasterCard also helps keep our postage, handling, and printing costs down, and we thank you. If you're in the Portland area, the number is 245-2345. From the desert, from the valley, the gorge, or the coast, use our toll-free number, 1-800-245-2346.
You see so many of our volunteers there taking the calls, and we appreciate your calling us right now. Enjoy an evening with Rick Steves, Public TV's popular host of Travels with Rick Steves. Compliments of OPB. Now that's when you contribute $120 to OPB. You'll receive a pair of tickets to a reception and his lecture on Sunday, March 31st at the Northwest Service Center at 6 p.m. Plus, you'll get 2 books, Best Travels in Europe and Europe 101, a guide to museums throughout Europe, and of course, the books are autographed by Rick Steves. Don't miss this opportunity to meet Rick, and all it takes is a $120 donation to OPB. If you're calling from Portland, that number is 245-2345, or for your convenience, we have a toll-free number for pledges coming from anywhere in our viewing area, 1-800-245-2346.
The response has been wonderful. Almost every person is on the phone, so if you get a busy signal, please keep trying. Just a little over 6 minutes now to have your pledge matched. Remember, commercial television has the statutory authority to sell commercial time to raise money. OPB does not have that option. Instead, the programs themselves have to sell you on the idea of making a voluntary contribution to support this station. It's your decision, but if you're one of the regular viewers of this remarkable news program, then you already know how pledges can improve the quality television journalism. Now, we're depending on that insight to convince you to pick up the phone and make a contribution of your own. Just pick up the phone, give us a call in Portland, 245-2345, and toll-free 1-800-245-2346 from anywhere else in Oregon or Southwest Washington.
Once again, here are the thank you gifts we're offering during this break. Take a look at this terrific-looking OPB black and gold collage tankard mug. Isn't it handsome? Well, for a pledge of $75, we'll send it right out to you. Also, you can have a matching OPB black and gold sweatshirt if you'll support OPB with a $125 pledge. Your $60 contribution to OPB brings you this delightful book, Where to Find the Oregon in Oregon, by Bridget Beatty McCarthy. It's a comprehensive guide to Oregon's special places that represent the essence of the state, plus a listing of the establishments whose products or services offer a local or regional experience. This easy-to-use book is yours with your $60 donation to Oregon Public Broadcasting. If you're in the Portland area, call 245-2345. From the desert, from the valley, the gorge, or the coast, use the toll-free number 1-800-245-2346.
About 4.5 minutes left to have your pledge matched dollar for dollar. Don't miss this opportunity. Go to the phone now. Now, you can enjoy an evening with Rick Steves, Public TV's popular host of Travels with Rick Steves, compliments of OPB when you contribute $120 to OPB. You'll receive a pair of tickets to his reception and his lecture on Sunday, March 31st at the Northwest Service Center at 6 p.m. Plus, you'll get 2 wonderful books, Best Travels in Europe and Europe 101, a guide to the museums and other features all throughout Europe. And of course, the books are autographed by Rick himself. Don't miss this opportunity to meet Rick Steves, and all it takes is your $120 donation to OPB. Please call us right now. And if you're in the Portland area, call us at 245-2345. Otherwise, use the toll-free number 1-800-245-2346. So take this opportunity to demonstrate your extra support for television, a cut above the ordinary. And you can put your $75, $120, or $125 contribution on Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or American Express.
I'm Bob Edwards. You usually hear me on NPR's Morning Edition from 5 to 9 a.m. on the radio stations of Oregon Public Broadcasting. Tonight I'm asking you to call one of the numbers on your screen and become a member of the OPB television family. It's the place where you see programs such as McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour and Wall Street Week, Washington Week in Review, in-depth programs. Whether you listen to OPB radio stations or watch OPB television stations, it's worth your time and support. Thank you.
Less than 3 minutes right now to make your contribution, and that contribution will be matched dollar for dollar. Tonight, your $55 contribution to OPB on your credit card brings you a $10 gift certificate to the OPB Store of Knowledge. The store carries a wide variety of items that stimulate your mind, your curiosity, and your sense of humor. Select what suits your family's needs from the OPB Store of Knowledge. It has something for everyone. Just ask for your $10 gift certificate when you donate $55 on your credit card to OPB. Remember, if you are calling from Portland, the number is 245-2345. From anywhere else in our viewing area, all of Oregon and Southwest Washington, call toll-free 1-800-245-2346.
Only about 2 minutes left. This is really a rare opportunity for you to have your pledge matched. Now, maybe you're not feeling so flush this month. Maybe you can only contribute $20, $25, but you have the knowledge of knowing that it's really going to be
each one
$50.
doubles.
Yes, it's a great opportunity. Please call us now. Now, we know that only 1 out of every, say, 6 people who watches OPB actually supports this station with a pledge of financial support.
If we were asking for a lot of money, it would be easier to understand, but a $35 annual membership amounts to just 76 cents a week. That's not very much. Less than the price of 3 postage stamps.
Oh, less than the latte I had this morning. You know, that's just not much to ask for, all you get. So don't hold out, help out. Just pick up the phone.
We're down to 1 minute and about 15 seconds, so we need your support. In Portland, the numbers are 245-2345, and of course, they're the toll-free number, 1-800-245-2346, from anywhere else in Oregon and Southwest Washington.
And don't forget all those wonderful gifts. We have the tankard, we have this wonderful book, Where to Find the Oregon in Oregon. All these can be yours for your gift.
The phones are ringing.
The phones are ringing. If you've gotten a busy signal,
Less than a minute to go.
Please call back. We do thank you very, very much. Also, OPB wants to thank Frontier Communications, which is the long-distance company, for donating the 1-800 number service during our membership drives. We appreciate that a lot.
Casey, we're doing well, and we're cutting down to about 30 seconds left, so please get on the phone right now. We need your support. The number again is 245-2345 right here in the Portland area.
And almost every single volunteer is on the phone. That's wonderful.
That's excellent.
That's not often excellent. That we weren't hearing the phones ringing. I almost thought, oh my gosh, we don't have anyone calling.
That's because they're busy.
They're all busy.
If they
They're
are
all
busy,
on the phone.
believe me, they will be free in just a few moments. So
that means
stay with us.
We have a lot of supporters of the the News Hour.
We're counting down now to 10 seconds. And only 10 seconds left to get in and have your money matched. So now let's return to NewsHour with Jim Lehrer on member-supported OPB. Our time is up. Thank you for your support tonight.
You can mail your contribution to Oregon Public Broadcasting, P.O. Box 4373, Portland, Oregon 97208. or call 245-2345 or 1-800-245-2346, and your phone volunteer will be happy to take your contribution.
Finally tonight, the weekend memorials by Cuban exiles. Betty Ann Bowser reports.
The national anthem of Cuba.
A crowd estimated at more than 60,000 filled Miami's Orange Bowl to memorialize the 4 young pilots shot down last week by Cuban MiGs off the coast of Cuba.
When the government of Fidel Castro tries, as it has, to deny that what it did was murder, America will tell the truth.
The young flyers belong to Brothers to the Rescue, an organization founded by Cuban exiles. They routinely fly over the Florida Straits looking for Cuban rafters fleeing Cuba. The 4 pilots were killed when they were on such a mission. There was thunderous applause when founders of Brothers to the Rescue flew over the Orange Bowl in a tribute to their fallen comrades. For Cuban exile Terry Zubizarreta and her American-born daughter Michelle, it was an emotional experience. They've heard stories about Castro's brutality for years, but nothing prepared them for the reality of the shootdown on February 24th.
I don't think there's anything, at least in my generation, in the years that I've been alive, that had this kind of impact. And then you also look at their ages. I think that for my generation, that kind of touched us also, because it's a whole different factor in terms of your own immortality. I mean, they were 24, 29 years old. I'm 28. So, and they were doing things that I don't think a lot of us would do. And yet they were, every day that they got into those planes, they were sacrificing their lives for Cuba. Some of them weren't even born there.
No, they gave us 90 minutes.
Michelle Zubizarreta is a senior vice president in her mother's advertising business, the largest Hispanic ad agency in the United States, with billings this year alone of $40 million. For years, Mrs. Zubizarreta has been active in Cuban-American causes, but the deaths of the young flyers has reignited her passions about Cuba.
This has been like a blow in the head. It has made us realize that that Castro's still there, that Cuba is still crying, and that we have to do something.
Do you think there should be any kind of normalization of relations between the two countries?
No, never. Not now.
This is the position of a number of anti-Castro organizations, like the Cuban-American Foundation. President Jorge Mascanosa says the 4 pilots' deaths have become a rallying point for the so-called hardline right.
We believe that this is a turning point in Cuban history, and it has redeemed the position that we have sustained all along. You can dialogue with a criminal.
Andreas Oppenheimer is a Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for the Miami Herald. He has been covering Cuban-American issues for more than 20 years.
There's no question that this has helped the hardliners within the Cuban community. This has pushed their agenda incredibly, and it has fallen as a cold shower on all the moderates and all the people who thought the U.S. and Cuba could begin negotiations towards a gradual normalization of relations.
One of the leaders of the pro-dialogue movement, Eloy Gutierrez Manoyo, concedes his side has suffered a setback. Once a political prisoner in Cuba, now living in Miami with his family, Manoyo says Brothers to the Rescue was deliberately provocative with the Cuban government.
Lo han hecho conscientemente.
Yes, they have done it with conscience. They needed those mártires, those martyrs. They needed them because it has proven that they have put an obstacle towards all the talks that have been done or anything that Clinton was doing with Cuba and trying to talk through a peaceful solution.
Jose Basulto, founder of Brothers to the Rescue, says he and his pilots have never tried to provoke Castro.
we must not waver in our efforts to bring assistance and support to those who struggle through nonviolent means inside the island. It is there where our first priority lies.
Basulto supports a third approach to the Cuban question, based on the peaceful, nonviolent principles of Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King. Basulto and other Cuban-American leaders believe that organizing flotillas that by flying close to Cuban airspace and holding demonstrations in a non-violent manner will keep Cuban issues alive in the international arena. Over the weekend, Basulto and the brothers flew near Cuba to memorialize the 4 dead pilots. In the waters below, a flotilla braved 8-foot seas to remember the young Cuban Americans. The television pictures were broadcast around the world, a strategy reporter Oppenheimer says is working.
The hardliners are seeing that brothers to the rescue, through nonviolent, peaceful moves, have sort of, number one, challenged Fidel Castro's propaganda line that all Miami exiles are right-wing terrorists. And number two, it has attracted international attention to Cuban civil rights violations.
This is a lot of the propaganda that we saw.
17-year-old Patrick Hidalgo has heard many stories of human rights violations from his exiled parents. Last summer, he spent 8 days with a Cuban family near Havana. He says the experience convinced him that opening up relations with the Cuban people is the only way to make Castro go peacefully.
They don't even know the good of democracy. And I think, how can they fight for something if they don't even know what it is? That's why I think we shouldn't isolate them further. As the Helms-Burton bill and all these other bills